Okay, boys and girls, our next topic for the week is finding the area of triangles. So we have been working on finding the area of rectangles and squares last week, and so the area of triangles is related to that. So if you want to grab a whiteboard or a dry erase or a sheet of paper and a calculator, and you can work along with this presentation. So, from last week, we talked about finding the area of rectangles, and the formula for that is base times height, or you could say width times length or length times width. When we talk about base, the base of our shape is like the bottom of our shape. So we would say that this right here would be the base, and then this here would be your height. So if you were multiplying the base times the height, or we could say the length times the width, you would end up with 48 square units inside of this rectangle. And we always express our units for finding area in square units, okay? So again, 8 times 6 is 48, and we would say square units. You can also use the little exponent of 2 to represent square units as well. All right. If we wanted to find the area of a triangle, so we're taking, if we go back, we're taking this exact same rectangle and with the exact same dimensions of 8 and 6, and this time we're going to find the area of this yellow triangle. So the formula is similar. They are related because if you look at this triangle, you can see that this triangle is exactly half of the rectangle. So to find the area of a triangle, we start with the formula for the area of a rectangle. So we are going to multiply the base times the height, okay? We are going to multiply the base times the height, which is 48. And then because the yellow triangle is exactly half of the rectangle, we're going to divide it by 2. Or in other words, we're going to cut that number in half. So we're going to take 48 and cut that number in half. So over here we have 8 times 6, which is 48. And remember that this fraction bar here means divide. Okay, so we're going to take 8 times 6, which is 48, and then cut that number in half or divide by 2. And 48 divided by 2 is 24. You can also think of the formula like this. You can also say 1/2 of the base times the height. Okay, so when you multiply something by a half, that is the same as dividing it by 2. So you can also use this formula, and you sometimes might see it written like this. Half of the base times the height is going to give us the area of this yellow rectangle, which would be 24 square units. Okay. All right, so the area of the triangle is 24 square units. The area of this blue triangle would also be 24 square units, and those two triangles together make up that original rectangle that we started with. Okay, so the area of a triangle is half the area of a rectangle, or you could say parallelogram. Okay, so we can practice this if you want to. You can jot these answers down, or you can work along with me with a calculator if you'd like. And if you're using a calculator, all you simply need to do is multiply the base times the height. Now, it doesn't matter what order you multiply in. You can multiply 9 times 6, or you can multiply 6 times 9, and then divide that by 2, or take half of that number. So 9 times 6 would equal 54. and 54 divided by 2 would be 27. So you would have to express your answers in square feet. Always for area, you would square your units. So all area answers must be expressed in square units. Okay? All right, so 27 square feet. The next one, we have a right triangle here that has a base of 3 and a height of 2. So if you multiplied 3 times 2 on your calculator, you would end up with 6. And then 6 divided by 2 would be 3. So your area would be 3 square centimeters. Okay. The next one here, we have a base of 6 and a height of 5. So that would be 6 times 5 divided by 2, or 5 times 6 divided by 2. And that is going to give you 15 square yards. Okay, another right triangle. We have a base of 8 and a height of 2. I will say that your height, if you remember from yesterday's video, the height of your triangle is never going to be a slanted line. The height of your triangle is always going to be perpendicular with the base. And by perpendicular, I mean you are making a right angle with your base. So your height is always going to be perpendicular to the base. So for this one, we would multiply 8 by 2, and that would give us 16. And then 16 divided by 2 is 8. Okay. Another strategy that you can do is you can take one of the numbers, you can take one of the dimensions and cut that number in half and then multiply it by the other number. So for example, if I took 2 and I cut that in half, that would give me 1. If I take 1 times 8, that's 8, which is my answer. If I did it the other way, if I took 8 and I cut that number in half first, which would give me 4, and then I multiplied it by the height, 4 times 2 is 8. So you could think of it that way. You can have one of the dimensions first and then multiply. I prefer to multiply both and just divide by 2. So 4 times 7 would give us 28. And 28 divided by 2 would give us 14 square meters. Okay, and we will do one more. And for this one here, we have a base of 8 inches and a height of 4 inches. And so 8 times 4 is 32. And 32 divided by 2 is 16. So we would have 16 square inches. What I mean by, I'm going to go over an example real quick of what happens when you have a triangle that is not a right triangle. So let me draw an example here real quick. Let me go back. All right, if you had a triangle, and Mr. J on the Ed Puzzle yesterday worked with triangles that were not always right triangles, but if you had a triangle that looked like this, okay, this is not a right triangle. So my base would be the bottom right here. This would be my base. And then my height is going to be perpendicular to that base. So I would start at the top up here and draw my line down to the base so that I was making that perpendicular angle there. And this would be the height of my triangle. Okay, so the height has to be perpendicular to the base. If you had an obtuse triangle, and we will be getting into a triangle unit in a few weeks, I believe that's coming up next after circles. But if you had an obtuse triangle that looked like this, okay, the base would be the bottom This would be the base of your triangle. And your height would not be those slanted lines. Your height is going to be perpendicular to the base. Okay, so imagine your base extending out to here. If your base extended out to here, which it doesn't, but if it did, then this would be your height. This line right here would be your height. Okay. So we will be working mostly with right triangles on the SOL test. So anyways, stay tuned for more videos and activities this week.